welcome to another episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I am your host, as always, Tony Defio, and I thank you for joining me on this lovely Friday evening in Pittsburgh. Can you believe we're in the third week of October already? Can you believe it? We're 10 days away from Halloween, about 5 weeks away from Thanksgiving. It's crazy how fast this time has flown in 2022. And wherever you are in Steeler Nation, like I always say, I hope it's nice and pleasant. And I thank you for joining me. And before I continue with this evening's program, I would ask you guys out there in podcast land to please like and subscribe to our Behind the Steel Curtain YouTube channel. We bring you live shows each and every day and night, including this show. A few hours earlier, you saw the Touchdown Under show with Maddie Peverell and Mark Davison. We Run the North with Kevin Tate. We have The Hangover with Brian Anthony Davis, Shannon White, and yours truly. We have the Scobro Show with Dave Schofield and Rich Schofield. That's on Tuesdays. On Wednesdays, we have Know Your Enemy with Jeffrey Benedict and Shannon. On Thursday, we have the very popular Steelers Preview with Jeff Hartman, Dave, and Brian. We have post-game stuff. We have all kinds of good stuff. And you can catch all of those live shows after the fact on any audio platform of your choosing. And, of course, you can catch all of our live shows live on Facebook as well. I always forget that part. And we also have a whole host of audio-only podcasts that we'd like you to check out because they're great, including Let's Ride with Jeff Hartman, State of the Steelers with State of the Steelers. We have What Yin's Talking About with Kyle Kreis and his gang. We have The Steelers Fix with Jeremy Betts and Andrew Wilbar. We have The War Room with Maddie. We have The Stat Geek with Dave. We have Bad Language with Brian Anthony Davis. We have a whole host of shows, and you can find those on any audio platform. Wherever you find podcasts, you can find our stuff. It's an ever-growing and ever more popular Steelers podcasting family, and you will not be sorry. And, of course, you can check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website. We bring you news, commentary, film breakdown. It's your one-stop shop for all your Steelers needs. And I thank you all for joining me again. And let's see what we have in the live chat. First off, we have Sean Manahan, who donates $2 to the cause. Thank you, Sean, for the $2. And he asks, think we can get 3 and 4 this week? I'm going to tease you, Sean, and say stay tuned. So I'll get into that in a little bit. But welcome to the show. And let's see what else we have in the live chat on this fine Friday evening. We have Mark Malone, the famous quarterback from the mid-'80s, the much maligned Mark Malone, who joins us every Friday night. He's with us tonight. Welcome, Mark. First one in. All right. First time for everything. Mark Malone is the winner of something. All right. We have Jared Devil, who's once again bridesmaid. George Teston, but welcome anyway, Jared Devil. You're a loyal fan. George Teston's with us. Kyle Johnson, Stacy Lynn, Ryan Jeffords, who says, T-Tone, what's up, buddy? Lon Campbell, Daniel Red. Hey, Tony, glad I got to see you live. Wow, I feel like Rod Stewart. Thank you, Daniel. Steeler Chick 46, legend. She's with us. The Cuda, 70 is with us. All right, you guys are fantastic. And I thank you for joining me again. I think it's the third time I've said that. But sometimes I lose my train of thought. It is late on a Friday night. So, but let's talk about those Steelers. And wow, I sat here a week ago and talked gloom and doom about this team, and rightfully so. I think. I mean, they lost 4 games in a row. They didn't look good doing it, especially that last game against the Bills, 38-3. You throw in the mix for that week for week 6. Tom Brady and the Buccaneers coming to Acrisure Stadium. You also throw into the mix a totally injury-riddled secondary, with the exception of Terrell Edmonds. That's right, even Minka was out. All the starting corners were out. They had to put the Marvin Leal on IR. Pat Fryermuth was out. I mean, it was an ugly scene the previous week, and Pittsburgh went into that game as a 10-point underdog. I think it was the largest they had ever been underdogs at home, certainly in a long time. And that was coming off a week earlier when they were 14-point dogs on the road at Buffalo. So, yeah, things weren't looking up for your Steelers, and yet they somehow, some way, found a way to beat the Buccaneers, and they led the whole way. I mean, they controlled the game all throughout. It was kind of amazing, and all started with the defense. This makeshift defense, missing again the entire secondary minus Edmonds. They kept the Buccaneers in check the entire day. Really, I mean, the front seven was magnificent. I thought it was the best game that it played since week one. And of course, they're still missing TJ Watt, that defense, but they played a marvelous game. Larry Ogunjobi, welcome to the party. They signed him in the offseason to replace the retired Stephon Tuitt. And I don't think anybody expected Ogunjobi to be Tuitt at Tuitt's best and most dominant, but I think we expected more from him. We expected more of what we saw when he played with Cleveland and last year with Cincinnati. And we just had not seen that from this guy over the first 5 weeks. He was kind of just there, but he was dealing with an injury that actually cost him a lot of money in the offseason. And that's why he was available late in the offseason for Pittsburgh to sign. So he was dealing with that during training camp. And, I think it's very plausible to say that he was still on the mend from that injury through the first few weeks of the season. And you know how it is when you're injured. One day you just kind of start feeling it again. You kind of start feeling like yourself again. And maybe he reached that point last week because he was totally dominant, and he was one of the reasons why that defense was so dominant. And if you get a guy like him dominating at the line of scrimmage like he did against the Bucs, well, that takes the pressure off of Cam Hayward, and we know what kind of pressure he's been under with TJ Watt out. It takes the pressure off of Tyson Alualu, takes the pressure off of Alex Highsmith, the outside linebacker opposite Watt, and he had another sack on Sunday. He stripped Brady of the ball. Unfortunately, the Bucs got the ball back, but Highsmith now leads the NFL with 6.5 sacks. So, it was a tremendous effort, and it was a tremendous effort by that secondary. James Pierre made a play or two. Josh Jackson looked good. Gosh, I'm missing some of the names, but they were splendid. Help me out. Who was the other starter? Wow, I can't believe I can't think of the other starter. James Pierre, Josh Jackson. Anyway, it was a great. And Terrell Edmonds. I mean, Trey Norwood. Trey Norwood had a great game, filling in at free safety. But Terrell Edmonds had the game of his life. He really did. 10 tackles. He led the team with 10 tackles. He made some fantastic plays. He was a leader. He led that crew, and they certainly needed somebody to lead them, and that was Edmonds. And I think fans are finally starting to come around to him and his value to this team. He's never going to be a superstar. He's never going to be that guy. But if you want a comparison, he's Ryan Clark. I'm not saying he's on that level, but he's that kind of guy. He's the Batman to Minka Fitzpatrick's, or he's the Robin to Minka Fitzpatrick's Batman. And for whatever reason, up until now, that just has not been good enough for the fans and the media. And it's been widely said that the reason why is because he's a first-round pick, and people expect more out of him. But it's important to remember that he was also, regardless of whether or not he was a reach, but there's no question he was a reach at number 28 back in 2018. He was also a late first round pick. Even if he wasn't a reach, he's still a late first round pick. And those guys aren't always superstars. Sometimes they just develop into solid players. And that's what Edmonds has been his entire career here. With the exception of a game or two, he's been totally 100% healthy, durable, consistent. He does a lot of the heavy lifting for them. We've chronicled people like Jeffrey Benedict and Shannon and those guys, KT Smith. I mean, they talk about how important he's always been with covering the tight end. And we know how much of a bugaboo that's been for their defense over the last decade or so. So he's just done a lot of heavy lifting. He can play dime. He can play in the box. He can cover. He's a great athlete. He's just not a playmaker. And people are used to that with Troy Polamalu and, of course, now Minkah Fitzpatrick. That's what you expect out of a safety that you pick in the first round. But he's just not that guy. He's just a really consistent player. And sometimes that's okay, even for a first-round pick. So kudos to Terrell Edmonds. Robert Spillane had a good game. I mean, he broke up at least one pass. I mean, that forced a punt. He was all over the place. He was playing safety. He was playing on a slot. He was playing dime linebacker. I mean, the guy was doing everything. He's always in pass coverage. I mean, I don't know if they always want him to be in pass coverage, but he always seems to be in pass coverage. So kudos to him. And, of course, Devin Bush. Devin Bush may have had the defensive play of the game when he broke up the 2-point conversion after the Bucs closed within 2 points with 4:38 remaining. He broke up the pass. I think it was to a tight end or a receiver, number 84, and Pittsburgh was able to run out the clock and preserve the win. And what a great effort by Mitch Trubisky late in that game, coming in for an injured Kenny Pickett, who suffered a concussion early in the second half. And Trubisky came in and he looked good, the best he's ever looked, maybe the best he's ever looked in his entire career. But he made some really great passes, and he helped them build a 20-12 lead in the fourth quarter with the touchdown pass to Chase Claypool, the first touchdown by a receiver this year for the Steelers, if you can believe that. And then, after it was 20-18, he made the necessary throws and runs to close the game out. Most importantly, I think, on 3rd and 16 after Mason Cole, that it was 2nd and 2 after the Bucs scored a touchdown. Najee Harris rattles off an 8-yard run. It's 2nd and 2, and Mason Cole's shotgun snap just goes flying by Trubisky. It didn't even fly by him. It kind of rolled past him. He just kind of rolled it back there, and it looked like it was going to be a disaster. And the Buccaneers were going to fall on it deep in Pittsburgh territory, but Trubisky found a way to fall on that ball. But even still, at that point, it's 3rd and 16. It's a 2-point game. It's Tom Brady on the other side, about to get the ball back. You're not feeling pretty good about things. But he found Claypool for a first down. A few plays later, it's 3rd and 11. He finds Claypool again, and Claypool makes maybe the best catch of his career, falling backwards and holding onto the ball and rolling out of bounds. Trubisky looked fantastic, and that's what you want out of a veteran backup quarterback. You want him to be able to come in and make those kind of plays. Of course, not all veteran backup quarterbacks are former number 2 overall picks. So you always knew the pedigree was there and the talent was there with Trubisky. But, we really hadn't seen much of that this year anyway, through 3.5 games as a starter for Pittsburgh. But we certainly saw that on Sunday at the end of that game as a backup for Pickett coming in. So that was great to see. And it was great to see Claypool have the game that he did. People who are much smarter than me pointed out this week that he was kind of playing the tight end role in place of Freiermuth, that guy that Pickett and Trubisky were looking for over the middle of the field. And, he had one of the best games of his career. And maybe that opens up some things for him moving forward. Even when Freiermuth comes back, he practiced. By the way, Freiermuth, he missed last week's game with a concussion. He's cleared to play this week, so he'll be back on Sunday. But even with Freiermuth back in there, hopefully they can continue to carve out a role for Claypool, other than what we had seen of him over the first 5 weeks, which wasn't much. So he had a great game. And it was just a great team win all the way around. Steven Sims with the what was it, 89-yard kickoff return or 82-yard kickoff return to start the second half, put Pittsburgh in great field position. Unfortunately, they couldn't parlay that into a touchdown, but it was still a big play, and it led to a field goal in a 2-point game that was huge. And he later had a 24-yard punt return. So it was a great day for him. Of course, unfortunately, he's out for this Sunday night's game against the Dolphins. So it's going to be back to Gunnar Olszewski as your return man. So, he can certainly use a redemptive night. So maybe we'll see that from him against the Dolphins. But it was a great contribution by Sims. Again, just a great all-around team effort. So Pittsburgh was able to keep its season alive. Not that, it would have been officially eliminated with a loss, but certainly dropping to 1-5. I mean, you're the prospects of having any kind of a chance at even contending for the playoffs at that point, I think would have been out the window. But now at 2-4 and only a game out of first place in the AFC North, believe it or not, they still have somewhat of a shot. I'm not saying that they should do whatever it takes to win at all costs. Shannon mentioned this the other day, and it was a great point. You want to see them still try to go for it and win as many games as they can and remain in contention and get a playoff spot or even a division championship if possible. But you don't want to do it, in the sacrifice of hindering your development of some of your younger players, namely Kenny Pickett. So he suffered, again, he suffered a concussion against the Bucs, but he was cleared to play this week. He was cleared to practice by Wednesday, which he was the quickest player to be cleared to practice after a concussion so far in 2022. So that's good news. There's a lot of controversy around that because of the new emphasis on concussions this year with what happened with Tua a few weeks earlier, suffering back-to-back concussions in that very scary scene in Cincinnati. And, we know all about that kind of thing with what happened to Ryan Shazier in Cincinnati in a primetime game back in 2017. So it was a very scary thing, and for Tua to go through that, and that put the spotlight back on the NFL and its problems with concussions over the years. So there's controversy with that, with Pickett being cleared to play. And unless something happens between now and Sunday night, starting against the Dolphins a week after suffering a concussion. But, I realize why people are worried about it, because I am too. Believe me, I'm not one of those people that's like, all right, go out there and sacrifice your health for my entertainment. No, I want these guys to be healthy. I want the NFL to stick around. And I was worried about its long-term existence back in the early 2010s when the concussion problem really went under the spotlight. So believe me, I want these players to be healthy. But my thing is, the NFL now has a protocol in place for concussions. So, if you have independent neurologists examining these players and, they're determining whether or not these players are okay to resume activity and start playing again, if they say that a player is cleared, then shouldn't that be it? I mean, shouldn't that be what you have to go by for now? I mean, it's either a player is cleared and ready to play again, or he's not. And if he is, then I think you have to trust your doctors. I mean, if you're worried about him suffering a concussion again 1 week after having his first, I mean, is there what does the science say? I don't know, but if a player is cleared, then he should be allowed to play. Now if the NFL wants to change its protocol and mandate that that a player who suffers a concussion must sit out a predetermined amount of time, well, that's a different story. But we're not there yet. And all the Steelers can do right now is follow the protocol that the NFL has in place right now. And right now, Kenny Pickett has been cleared to play. So I think he should play. Tua sat out a few weeks, but that was a different circumstance. I mean, that was ugly. And he had, 2 concussions in a row. And, they were being overly cautious with him. But, other athletes have suffered concussions and have come back in a week and have been fine. So, I think, Pittsburgh's doing the right thing by allowing Pickett to play in this game, So I'm happy with it. And I think that's how it should be. As far as Pickett being pulled for performance reasons and having Trubisky back in there again because he played so well at the end of that game, I don't think you want to go down that road either. Now that you have Pickett in there, and now that he's your starter, and he's your future franchise quarterback, or at least you want him to be that. I don't think you should be putting him in and yanking him out, or whoever you decide to designate as your starter. He should stay in there for the long haul because you don't want to be having this quarterback carousel. I think that's one thing that coming into the 2022, I was hoping they would avoid. So I'm kind of glad in a different way, in addition to Pickett being healthy from his concussion, I'm glad that Tomlin is sticking with him, even though he didn't play his best game last Sunday against the Buccaneers. He's still young. He's still learning. You gotta let him learn on the job, so to speak. You have to let him go through his growing pains and struggle and figure things out. You can't be putting him in, taking him out, putting him in, taking him out. That's just not good. So I'm glad that Pickett's playing for a multitude of reasons, namely the fact that I know he's healthy because the doctors cleared him. And number 2, Tomlin is sticking with his young quarterback, even though he hasn't been playing his best since that Jets game. So that's my second thing I want to talk about. And before I continue, I want to pause for a few seconds and allow you to hear from our sponsors. And welcome back to Steelers Six Pack with your host, Tony Defio. I thank you for joining me. I thank you for being here with me. And Sean Manahan donates another $2, and he asks, and thank you for the $2 again, Sean. Or he says, his statement is, issue with Tua was they called a back injury, not head injury. That's right. That was the problem, is they diagnosed him with a back injury initially against the Bills when they upset the Bills in week 3, and turns out it was a concussion, and he suffered another one the following week, and just 4 days later, that was another issue. That his very scary scene in Cincinnati occurred 4 days later. So I mean, it was just a PR nightmare and a health nightmare for the NFL. But I think that the Pickett situation is different. You can't, again, as long as the protocol is what it is right now, then you can't blame the Steelers for putting for allowing Pickett to start this game against the Dolphins. Now, maybe they'll have a last second change of heart and hold him out for another week. But again, will another week matter if a player's, does that make you healthier? Does that make the brain healthier? I don't know. I'm obviously not a doctor. So, but as of now, Kenny Pickett is slated to start. All right. About Sunday's game. To answer Sean's initial super chat from earlier, yes, I do think they can go to 3-4. And believe it or not, even though I've been very critical of them this year, I have this feeling. I don't know. I can't really quite explain it. I have a feeling that they're going to win this game. It just feels like the kind of game that Pittsburgh wins more often than not. They knocked off the Bucs to the amazement of everybody, and now they're going to Miami in a primetime game, Sunday Night Football. And it kind of reminds me of that Chargers game back in 2019 when I went to LA to play them when they were still playing in that little soccer stadium on Sunday Night Football. It was with Duck Hodges as their quarterback. They were 1-4 at that time. And speaking of concussions, Mason Rudolph missed that game because he had a concussion against the Ravens. So Hodges filled in. And it kind of feels like that it's going to be that kind of a night. By most accounts, there are a lot of Pittsburgh fans will be there. A lot of Steeler fans will be in attendance in Miami. They said there were a lot of Bills fans there when the Bills were there a few weeks ago. It seems to be that kind of a stadium now, with the Dolphins struggling a lot in recent years. Hard Rock Stadium, where the Dolphins play, is kind of gets taken over by ravenous visiting fans, and certainly we know that certainly describes Steelers fans. So I expect it to be at least a split as far as the attendance, and maybe even a home game for the Steelers. And it's going to be at night, so it won't be 95 degrees like it's been. What I say, it was like 126 degrees at one point when the Dolphins and Vikings played the other day or last week. So I just have a feeling, and the Dolphins, their defense isn't the greatest. It's ranked 23rd. Their secondary is kind of beat up. They're having issues on the offensive line. They have a couple guys questionable. So I think maybe this finally might be the game that the offense breaks out. I mean, it's hard to imagine because I don't even know what that would look like right now. What a potent offensive attack would look like for your 2022 Pittsburgh Steelers. But it has to happen sometime. So why not Sunday night? If you want to draw some parallels from the past, Kenny Pickett is playing the Dolphins in Miami on a Sunday night, which is where Ben Roethlisberger started his first game and won his first game back in 2004. And it was also on a Sunday night thanks to a hurricane. Now, I realize Pickett, he already has one official win as a starter because he was the starting quarterback against the Bucs, so he got credit for that win. So it wouldn't be Pickett's first career victory if he were to win this game, if Pittsburgh were to win this game, but it would certainly feel like it if he would finish the game, with Pittsburgh winning the game. It would feel like it was Pickett's first win as a starter. So you have that. I'm not saying it's going to be easy because we saw how well the Dolphins played with Tua in there over the first 3 weeks. I mean, they were 3-0. They beat up the Patriots. They stormed back to beat the Ravens. I think they were down by 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Came all the way back and beat them in Baltimore. Knocked off the Bills in Miami. So I mean, this is a good team. And Tyreek Hill is just on another planet right now, the way he's playing. I mean, he has 50 receptions already for over 700 yards. I mean, he's just almost impossible to defend. He's certainly the best deep threat in the NFL. He's probably the best weapon right now in the NFL. And then you have Jalen Waddle, who was a high draft pick on the other side. He has, 30 plus catches, over 500 yards already. I mean, it's going to be a tough task. And you have Killer Witherspoon. He's probably he's listed as doubtful for Sunday. So he's going to miss another game. So you're going to need somebody, again, to step up in that secondary to cover these guys, these awesome receivers. But, if you're expecting them to be able to sit back there and cover these guys, it's not going to happen. What you need is what you saw last week with Tom Brady, and that's you need the front seven to be dominant. And again, the offensive line is injured. So you need to be able to get after Tua. And of course, he's obviously more mobile than Brady, so it's not going to be as easy to get after him, but you still have to disrupt him. You have to make him uncomfortable. You have to force him into making some mistakes and coming up with some turnovers, and that's how you win this game. So it just feels to me like this is the kind of game that they normally win. After beating the Bucs the way they did, now you're feeling good about them again, and you're coming up on the bye after the Eagles game. So for them to lose this game, it would be their 5th AFC loss. And that would be, forget about the 2-5. That's bad enough. But they'd be 1-5 in the AFC, which, unless you have another tie thrown in there, that's going to be a killer for you come the end of the year. If you do find a way to rebound and get back into the race, if it comes down to a tiebreaker, how many AFC losses are you going to have when it's all said and done? So to have 5 after 7 games, that would be tough to come back from. So that's one reason why I just don't feel like it just feels like they're going to find a way to win this game. It doesn't, and it's not wishful thinking on my part. I've just watched a lot of sports over the last 40 plus years, and I've seen a lot of Steeler games, and traditionally this is just that kind of game that they win, because, if you're going to get back in the race, whether it's the divisional race or just the playoff race overall, you're going to have to start stacking some wins sooner or later. You can't just win a game and then lose 1 or 2 and then win a game. And eventually you're going to have to put a streak together. So, why not 2 in a row in Miami? And then we'll worry about Philadelphia then. So to answer Sean's question again, yes, I do think they can be 3-4. I think it doesn't feel as daunting a task as it did going into Buffalo 2 weeks ago, or even against the Bucs, who knows, they may be overrated by this point. We might be looking at them and it might just be about Brady's mystique. That's why they were a 10-point favorite to begin with, and maybe they didn't deserve to be a 10-point favorite because they really have not looked that good this year, certainly on offense. But still, though, it was a shocker that they won. So Miami doesn't feel like that kind of of an opponent at this point. We could be wrong. They could totally blow Pittsburgh's doors off and put themselves back on the map again with Tua as a full-time starter again for them. But it just doesn't feel like that to me. It feels like Pittsburgh's going to find a way to pull this game out and improve to 3-4. And, depending on what happens elsewhere in the AFC North, they'll still be in the mix for the division title. They'll still have 4 games to go in the division, and, they'll still have 10 games to play overall. So I think it's vital that they win this game. I think it's the most important game of the year, and I think they're going to come through. So that answers your question there, Sean. All right. On that note, I think I will close the show out by answering some questions and highlighting some comments from the live chat. And I'm not surprised that the first thing that pops up is trade talk. And this is from Tom Felagio from YouTube. It says, they're saying the Steelers might trade Mason to Washington for some cornerback. Have you heard anything on that? I have not. I haven't heard a thing about that. I don't know if they want to risk trading their third string quarterback when they have issues with their starter as far as concussions, because they can that can pile up on you pretty quick. I mean, last week if Rudolph was he was inactive for that game, and the emergency quarterback behind Trubisky was Zach Gentry. So imagine that. I haven't heard anything about. I've heard it's natural with the trade deadline coming up, and with trades much more prevalent now than ever in the NFL. It's natural to hear these kind of rumors, but we've been hearing this about Rudolph since the summer, and nothing substantial has really been reported by anybody. Of course, you're hearing the rumors about Chase Claypool. They've been out there all week with the Packers, quote unquote, aggressively pursuing Claypool, whatever that means. I don't know. I mean, does it mean they're offering multiple second round picks? Probably not. Does it mean they're calling Omar Khan every hour? Maybe that's what they mean. But maybe they're calling every hour and offering a 6th round pick. I don't know. I think people have to remember. I've heard more than one actual real journalist make this mistake on the radio this week. People have to remember, Claypool was not in his final year of his rookie deal. He has one more year after this. So, I mean, if you're going to trade the guy, why not wait till after the year and trade him in the offseason? People say, oh, his stock might be higher now than ever. Yeah, maybe, but, people tend to they tend to forget things in the offseason, and if more than one team is going after a player, or if they need help at a particular position, then that drives the value up of a player, even if he had a subpar previous season. So, I would keep him for now. After Johnson and Pickens, there really isn't much there at receiver for them. Calvin Austin, we have no idea about this guy, the 4th round pick in the past draft. We didn't see him much in training camp. We didn't see him in the preseason. He's still not active. I mean, for all we know, he might be the new Quez Golson. The guy has yet to do anything. So, I mean, that's your, if you get rid of Claypool, I mean, you're down to 2 receivers, really. I mean, Miles Boykin's just a guy. It's really all he is. Steven Sims is having injury issues. He got hurt against the Bills. He's hurt again. So, then you have Gunnar Olszewski, who's obviously no bargain. So, yeah, I mean, if you trade Claypool, fine, you might be able to get a 2nd or 3rd round pick for him for next year, but you're really hamstringing your offense. Not that it's obviously it's hamstrung enough as it is, and you're taking a weapon away from your young quarterback if you trade him away. So, I don't know. I'm always inclined to keep the player once the season starts, and provided they're still in the race, which they are, then I'm always about keeping the player. I mean, I don't really care about draft picks for the future. I know a lot of fans are enamored with that stuff. I really don't care as much as other people do about draft picks, because, Chase Claypool was a 2nd round pick, and now here he is in his 3rd season and people want him gone. So, it's nice to say 2nd round pick, but that pick is eventually going to turn into a player, and we don't know what kind of player that player is going to be. He might be somebody you want gone in 2 or 3 years. So here's one from the CUDA 70, who says about the Steelers' return game with Steven Sims out this week. They should put Benny Snell in for kickoffs. He is the backup at game time. I don't know. He hasn't really had much of a career in that regard. But maybe he won't. Kickoffs aren't really that big of a deal, because, most of them end in touchbacks. Punt returns are much different. And I don't know anybody else other than Calvin Austin who could return punts for them. So I guess Gunnar is going to be it this week. Hopefully he he has gotten over his ball control issues. Let's see what else we have here. Let's go on down the line. There's another from Tom Villaggio, and he says, I'm pretty sure the Dolphins are going to try to go long like Buffalo did against the Steelers with Hill and Waddle. Hopefully, the Steelers will be ready. Well, again, a lot of that's going to depend on them getting after Tua and pressuring him like they did Tom Brady last week. If you remember that Bills game, they put zero pressure on the guy. They hit him once. One quarterback hit the entire day. That's not going to get it done. So if believe you me, if Tua has that kind of protection this week, he's going to light the Steelers up because, Hill and Waddle, I mean, having one of those guys is bad enough. Having two of them, yikes. So yeah, you're going to have to be able to put pressure on Tua and force him into mistakes. And that's where people like Minka Fitzpatrick, who's returning this week, that's where he comes into play. He has to be that thorn in the side that you don't know where he is, you don't know where he's coming from, you don't know what he's going to do on any given play. So they're going to have to make life tough and confusing for Tua. He's a young quarterback. He hasn't really established himself yet. He's coming back from being off for a few weeks. You gotta make life tough for him. And this one from George Teston. So did Pickett actually have a concussion? He was diagnosed with one. That's all we know. He was diagnosed with one. I don't know if they were diagnosing him with that as a precaution, because he did hit his head when he fell backwards. When he was hit. But he was officially diagnosed with it, so that's all we can go by. But if the doctor said he was cleared to practice in a few days, that's all we can go by, and they're going to continue to monitor him and see how he reacts to exertion and running around and sometimes players, they develop symptoms a day or two later. They feel fine, and then a day or two later they're they have headaches or they're nauseous or whatever. So, that's why it's still, I expect him to play, but it wouldn't shock me if something happens by Sunday night where they decide to sit him down. All right, let's see what else we have here. This is another one from follow up on the previous statement. This is from Davin Eugene Douglas, who says Tua suffered a misdiagnosis on his first one, then got a second concussion. I hate the comparison to Kenny Pickett. They should already have the concussion-proof helmet from the Woodpecker studies from back in the 2010s. I'm not sure about that study, but you are right, Davin. It's not everything's comparable. Tua was misdiagnosed, and then he suffered another scary injury, head injury a few days later, whereas Pickett, suffered a concussion officially, and he went through the protocol, and he was cleared. And as far as we know, he's still cleared. So it's not a apples to apples comparison. And people are trying to make it into that because of what happened to Tua, and I get it. I mean, it was a very scary thing to see him lying on the field with his fingers were, he had no control over his faculties, and it was he blacked out. So I get why people are concerned, but again, if you're either deemed ready to play or you're not, and if he is ready to play or if he is cleared, then what else can you do other than just hold him out just for the optics of it, just for the PR of it? I don't know if that's the if that would even make things better, other than it would just it would be a PR move. So And this is one from Myra. I can't talk tonight. Myra, Jane, and Bert. Unfortunately, it's football. These men sign up for it. If you clear protocol, you play. Yeah, it's a tough sport. It's always going to be a tough sport. That's why I laugh at a lot of these fans, like these almost bloodthirsty fans who complain about it being flag football. Like, it's not flag football. You watch these games, and these athletes are bigger, faster, and stronger than they've ever been. And these hits that they take out there are real, and they're devastating. And even clean hits can do damage. So, the NFL is doing, I think it's done a great job over the last 12, 13 years in trying to clean some of this stuff up, trying to eliminate headshots, trying to eliminate a lot of these kill shots. But there's only so much you can do. I think it was illustrated in the movie Concussion. I mean, yeah, you have a helmet, but the brain kind of moves around. So, there's only so much you can do. I think the mistake that the league made for decades was they didn't take head injuries seriously. They would always, he just got his bell rung. He's got his bell rung. He'll be okay. At least it wasn't a knee injury. I used to think those kind of things when I was a kid, because that's all I had. I was just going by what society said about concussions. It wasn't that big of a deal. Well, now we know it is a big deal. And I think the one thing that and I've said this before, the one thing these players have going for them now, compared to 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, is they know what they're getting into. They know the risks. They know what they're signing up for. And there are protocols in place that treat head injuries much more seriously than they ever did. And, it's a high profile injury now. I think it used to be considered a minor injury. Nobody really, thought it was a big deal. Well, now it is considered one of the more serious injuries a player can suffer. So, moving forward, you're probably not going to be able to prevent concussions. There's only so much you can do with that. You might be able to prevent more than you did in the past, but you're definitely going to, there's now a mechanism in place to make sure these guys sit out until they are fully healthy and cleared to play. Whereas in the past, you didn't have that. Everybody was out there working blindly. At least the players and coaches were. I'm not convinced that the doctor. I think the movie Concussion kind of let us in on the little secret that the doctors knew what was up long before anybody else did. So, it is a tough sport. It's always going to be a tough sport, and all they can do now is utilize the information that they have, and protect themselves as much as they can. But it's always going to be a game where head injuries take place. I'm sorry, I missed one here. Here's one from Brian Brown, who asks, "Do you think Muth's return will cause Claypool to fade?" That's a good question, because, as I mentioned earlier in the show, he seemed to be playing the tight end role on Sunday, and now with Muth back in there, he might go back to his old role, and he might kind of fade back into the background. I hope not, because I think we saw on last Sunday what kind of a tremendous weapon this guy can be. And, we saw it a lot in 2020. I mean, it's up to Matt Canada. If you have a Freiermuth and you have a Claypool, you have these two big studs who, you got one who's a traditional tight end and one's just a really big wide receiver. It's up to you to find a way to utilize both of them, So hopefully Canada, saw, hey, look, this, I forgot how much of a weapon this guy can be. And yes, Freiermuth is coming back, but we still have to find a way to utilize this guy, his strengths, and not just kind of pigeonhole him into a role that maybe kind of neutralizes what he can do well. So hopefully not. All right. On that note, I think I'm going to call it a night. It's 9:50. was a fun show. Remember to keep checking back to Behind the Store Curtain, the website, all weekend, and keep checking back to our podcasting channel, both on YouTube and on Facebook, and our audio platform. So I will talk to you on Monday on the Hangover with Brian and Shannon White. Enjoy that game on Sunday. And as I always say, go Steelers.